Mm.
Welcome to the Bear Collective podcast, where we meet you at the edge of what you know and dance with you into the depths of what you don't in all things personal development, relationships, and lifestyle. We empower you to take what you need and leave what you don't. Thank you for listening, watching, and subscribing. Let's get into today's episode.
All about reframing. And this is super interesting because I think it's a really common tool used in the personal development world. Definitely one that we were both kind of like taught together and like deepened in on.
Yeah.
And one that we've had an interesting relationship with.
Yes, I think the initial relationship with this was like, oh, this is great. Like, look at all these tools we're learning. Not realizing that we were really sitting on the surface with this tool. And then as we've evolved, as our work has evolved, really deepening into, okay, we need more.
Yeah.
We need more. This isn't quite doing the trick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think where this came up for me, like, you know, I'm somebody who has been in therapy, has seen coaches throughout like my 20s, my 30s, etc. I'm not shy of doing personal development work. And it's a tool that's often come up in those spaces. And I want to first clarify that it is helpful in changing a mindset or a state that you're in just in a moment, but it's just not sustainable long term. And that was the discovery that I had with it. It didn't hit the same way, you know, just to continue using it.
Yes.
So let's kind of clarify a little bit what reframing is.
Yeah.
So reframing is changing your mindset in that current moment for that problem not to be a problem in that present moment.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So, however, reframing creates a cycle of dealing with that same problem when it pops up again and again.
Because it will pop up again and again. And we've talked to this in previous episodes around mindset where, you know, we need to go into the body a bit more with that. So definitely tune into those. But yeah, I think like a really great sort of short-term, in the moment, situational example that this could work with, like, let's say, you're waking up in the morning and your first thought is like, oh, I don't want to go to work today. Like a common reframe for something like that is, I get to go to work today. Like, I'm so lucky that I have a job, that I get to go out that door. I can't wait to have my morning coffee. Like, that's a really basic example of a reframe and how it can really snap you out of that, like, moment of like resistance to getting out of bed. And for things like that, it can be really helpful.
Yeah. And I want to preface this also, it is a valid tool depending on where you're at in your personal development journey.
Yeah.
Whilst we say this is a surface level tool, it has a place in your journey.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that example that you mentioned, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Can really help.
Yeah. When you come into a space where, you know, you're uncovering some of the deeper work and the deeper wounds that you might have around like self-worth or your self-esteem, around self-doubt or things like that.
Yeah.
Simply saying, you know, I am worthy, which is also a reframe, which also sounds like an affirmation. That's where it doesn't always land for people just in the moment to, I am confident, I can go on stage, I can do this, I can give this speech and I'm going to be amazing. It can feel fake.
Very fake. Yeah, fake's a good word for this because it's really not fixing the problem.
Correct.
It's not deep enough.
Yeah. So dissolving it is actually doing the work around it to decide that the problem that's coming up for you is never going to be a problem again. Dissolving it creates self-awareness before it pops up so that it doesn't play out.
Yeah. Yeah. So how
you're
is
actually
someone
noticing the problem? You're more consciously aware of this keeps being a reoccurring pattern or theme that's coming up for me. And I always go to reframe, like I am confident, but really there's an insecurity underlying that.
Yes.
And when I actually get into the details of like why I feel insecure and what's actually coming up for me, it's then noticing that pattern that's about to play out for you and doing the deeper work. And we're not going to diving into that because each person is so individual with
Yeah.
this work and what their
It's so
need is. We
layered.
can't give a generic kind
Yes.
of or general example. But doing the deeper work allows you to create a conscious choice in that moment to choose differently, and because you can see and self-reflect in that moment as well what's happening for you, where the stories are coming from, and how your life is all like pieced together in that moment.
So it's like becoming aware and seeing it in advance in certain scenarios gives
Yeah.
you that choice,
Yeah.
which can
Yeah.
then have that deeper effect than what just a simple reframe will do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's important to mention here, like the place I've seen reframing like used or recommended the most is around limiting beliefs or around fears in general. And what I found in my work, and I know it's the same for you, is those like, and I will also call them like surface level fears or surface level limiting beliefs, always relate to a deeper core belief that needs this deeper work.
Yeah.
So it's not, as you said before, you know, you can't just tell yourself you're worthy, or when your original limiting belief is that you're not. That isn't going to cut it here.
Yeah. So self or beliefs or limiting beliefs, I think, as well as manifesting, is where this whole reframe ties in.
Yeah.
If you're doing manifesting and you're saying like, I am worthy of money, I am great, I am successful, like I'm going to get that job promotion, and it doesn't really sit well with you, that's because there's a deeper thing underneath that doesn't actually believe what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're not believing that.
Yes. I heard this thing once. I don't know if it was maybe even you that told me, and you were like, or it was a book I read, I don't know, it was somewhere. And it was like, imagine yourself holding the amount of money that you want to earn. If you're trying to like manifest money or, you know, make more money, imagine yourself holding that amount of money. How does that feel in your body?
Yeah.
Because you can tell yourself, you can reframe it and be like, yes, I can earn this many hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. But if that doesn't feel comfortable for you, there's something in disalignment. There's something that's not going to click.
Correct.
And you're not going to get there.
It's like, why do you see so many lotto winners? And there's research and statistics around there.
Yes.
So many lotto winners go broke within the first 5 years because they haven't actually developed. There's missing skills, there's missing unmet needs, there's things that we are getting like pleasure out of playing out a certain part of ourselves, having that limiting belief. We get to stay small, we get to stay stuck in a certain place by not having the thing that we actually desire. So there's a disconnect there.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what our job as, you know, therapist and coach are, is to help uncover those things. But yeah, that was something that I had used with the money side, because you have to develop skills and go through the processes to actually hold that level of money, that level of wealth, what it means for you, how people are going to perceive you, how you're going to perceive people perceiving you. For example, you know, what meaning you make around it, you know, etc., and how you deal with people. Like in that particular example, it's, and we're going a little bit off topic here, but in that particular example, you know, all of a sudden you have family come out of the woodworks who want, you know, money from you, and it's, you have to embody your boundaries or your no, or, you know, your decision around that and the impact that has, which could be losing relationships, but you might value family really highly, so it feels really conflicting. So that's where there's so many textures and layers, you know, to doing the deep work, and simply why just putting a reframe over the top of all that will not work.
It's not going to fix it at all.
And you're actually, when you use a reframe now, where it's like super helpful, say, you know, you're about to go into a meeting with your boss and ask for a pay rise. Yes, you do or will need that little pump up and that reframe to help you go like, I am worthy of this pay rise. Like, I know I do a great job, right? I know that I can do this next, you know, promotion or whatever it is. And you may feel naturally nervous, and that's okay. So using a reframe in that context is so okay to get you through that meeting. but then don't bypass the emotion that you feel. That is the work. If you bypass the emotion, you're simply just, again, that's where we go into a pattern of just using reframing to help just deal with moments as they come up versus actually going, okay, I felt really insecure going into that meeting. Let me unpack what that insecurity means for me and what those emotions that were coming up for me. Yes, there was nervousness. Okay, that's natural. But what other emotions were coming up for me in there? Was I fearful of being rejected?
Yeah.
And what would I do if I wasn't? What would I do if I did get rejected in that moment?
Yes.
What were my choices going to be? How would I react? How would I make that rejection mean something about me? How would I internalize it?
Yeah, and even having those skills to know you can survive a rejection in that moment. You know, this is often a question I'll ask. It's like, okay, if that worst thing does happen, can you survive it? And I'll prefer to use a question like that versus a reframe that's just saying, I'm not going to get rejected.
Yeah.
Because there's no way we can control that. Our boss might hate it.
Yeah. Or we think it's great.
Yes. Yes, we think we're great.
Yeah.
They still might reject it.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think a big fear of like being seen and heard in a moment like that too. I don't know why. I just want to bring that up. Like we can go into so many interactions with people, you know, just thinking that it's, I'm nervous about this. And actually like we're stepping into a performative role or showing someone some work that we've put a lot of time and energy into, you know, we've used our brain, our thoughts, our processes for. Sometimes there's that real fear of being seen and heard, and that's what's underlying it. And now for many of us, we know that is never just something that's showing up today just because. Like that fear of being seen and heard, that type of insecurity, that's coming from not being seen, not being heard, not having parts of us celebrated, respected, loved, attended to as children. So I mean, think about how deep that can go.
Yeah.
Think about how much a reframe is not going to just cover that up. Or it might cover it up for like 5 minutes.
Yeah. Which is its purpose of a reframe.
Yes,
right?
That's where it can help.
Yeah. Very momentary, but long term, it is not solving the patterns. And I just think of like what you were saying then, we just filmed an episode around relationships and we can even use reframing and project that onto somebody else. And we can reframe their behaviors. We can reframe how they treat us, which also sounds like justifying, right?
Yes.
Or explaining or making excuses.
Yes.
That's another textual layer to reframing when we're using it against somebody else or using it on somebody else. And that's where if we don't do the deeper work, reframing can actually be self-sabotaging in those relationships because we're choosing not to see something.
Yes.
So it's like, what am I, you know, why am I using this reframing right now? What am I choosing to avoid seeing in myself or somebody else that's actually self-sabotaging me or causing me more pain? What am I choosing not to see? What am I choosing to avoid looking at?
Those shadow elements.
Yeah. You know, where am I reframing a pattern or a common trigger or a reaction that I have to justify my reaction of feeling hurt? You know, when I'm actually just perpetuating playing the victim.
Yes. Yes. My head was screaming out then, victim, victim, victim.
And no one likes to think of themselves as the victim.
No.
But statistically, it's 85 or 87% of people live in a victim mentality.
Live there.
Yeah.
That's a huge stat. That's more than I would have predicted.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think we can all do it.
Yeah.
But to think that we like that many people live there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a hard one to acknowledge in yourself. Absolutely. But think about how powerful that would be if like
it is.
I mean, I'm not really existential here.
Yeah.
But I'm like, think about if like even 70% of those people could step out of that and feel empowered. What would they do with their lives?
Correct.
Sorry, I'm going big.
Who would they be?
Yes.
Right. And that's the question. That's where when you're looking for authenticity, when you're looking for self-worth, when you're looking for you know, developing your self-love, your self-trust, your self-confidence. These things only come by doing the deep work and not staying at the reframe on the surface.
Yeah.
It comes from looking at where you are playing out the victim side and taking responsibility. The reason we stay playing small and stay playing in that victim state and we use reframing is because it's safer.
Yeah.
It's safer to how people perceive us and how we perceive that we're, you know, putting ourselves out into the world, how we want other people to see us.
Yeah.
Because when we do the deep work, we might have to let go of some of those things that we've been doing.
Yeah.
Some of those manipulation tactics that we've been doing, some of those, you know, strong reactions that we have, some of those things that we blame our parents for, you know, the reason we are the way we are because our parents did that or believed that or said that or stopped us from doing something in our childhood that, you know, we just don't do now.
You're
That
such
fear
a
of judgment.
Yeah, and like, I mean, yes, that sounds scary. I'm sure for a lot of people too. I know it's scary for me when I went through my own self-development initially, but then it can also be so beautiful. I just want to put that here, like, it can be so beautiful to find that part of you that like it does manipulate, for example, and to learn to love her or him or whoever, and just bring that back into your heart, bring that back home, bring that back into compassion, celebrate that expression of yourself in a healthy way, and, you know, let that play out in really lovely ways if you need to, just to become that whole human.
Yeah.
And accept that whole human.
Yeah. So going back into, for me, like the reframing is often kind of like a version that we use in manifesting as well. Manifesting, I do believe in, I do use it, but I do believe there is a gap of, I don't know if I would say knowledge or experience, maybe a combination of the two, of really understanding manifestation and the power of like your language and feeling it to know that you're not just simply trying to reframe, like, and where you're feeling that disconnect and then choosing to do the work to dissolve that. Otherwise, you just sit there wondering why things aren't happening, but you're saying all the affirmations and all of a sudden you're still not feeling confident or sexy or, you know, rich or, you know, whatever those affirmations are for you, even though you've been doing them for 6 months, you know, or 2 weeks in the mirror.
Yes. And why aren't they feeling like they're working?
Yeah. You know, we often, you know, with this social media world that we're in, we can look at those and follow those accounts that are all about manifestation, and these people are talking about all these things that they've called in. I really do think one thing that is not communicated in that specific kind of like niche of this work is all the deeper inner work that they've done around that. All the stuff that you're meeting them at a certain point after years and years of them, you know, doing the discovery work. And you're seeing that and you're trying to close that gap by jumping to their next level, but you actually have to meet yourself at your level.
You do, but and that even just ties back into our like self-worth and self-confidence and self-doubt. Like if we're here and we're performing here or we're healing at this space, like, you know, lower down to those people that we're comparing ourselves to who are much further along the track, that gap is actually what creates the doubt within ourselves. So that's really powerful what you mentioned. Yeah.
I think just looking at how we reframe. So asking yourself, really understanding that question of how am I using reframing and is it serving me? Because if you're someone who's out there who you've done some therapy, you've done some coaching, you've done some personal development work or courses or read books or podcasts where they've spoken about reframing, or in that context, like the examples that we've shared, and you're not connecting to it, or you feel like it's not working for you, I really want to encourage you that it is around doing some of the deeper work. Welcome to being intellectual and needing something more. Welcome to being curious and needing something deeper and something more tangible.
Absolutely. And I think this is where, like, it's so important to, think about where you're at on your healing or personal development journey, and think about if you need someone new or a new, you know, tool or a new book or whatever it is, like if you're feeling stagnant, there's a reason. And I know, like, unfortunately, something that really like disappoints me in the mental health field is that, you know, a lot of our clients come from referrals, and the therapy on those referrals dictated by the GPs is CBT, because it's the most evidence-based.
And CBT is cognitive behavior therapy.
And it's big time on reframing. Like, it's one of the main elements, I would say. And then, you know, if you're experiencing that and you're feeling stuck in therapy, that might be why. Like, maybe that's your therapist's go-to. Maybe you are kind of stuck in that rigid space of a mental health care plan and having to, you know, your therapist actually is supposed to stick to those guidelines. So maybe you need to step outside of that box a little bit. Maybe you need to find someone who does something a little bit differently.
And that touches on like the example that I think I've shared with you before, where I've definitely seen psychologists and therapists, and I do think, again, in your journey there is time and place and value and why you chose those people and seeing them. And I got to a point for me where I was going through kind of like the motions, and it would help, but I always felt like there was still this piece, and the way I describe it to you is like a kind of like a teapot, like a tea saucer that you put your cup of tea on, but like metal, like lodged in my brain. And it was there for years. And it wasn't until I stepped outside of the psychology work and I started going down my own, you know, development journey of learning coaching, and then finding my own coach and doing shadow work for me, that actually broke that plate in my head, that metal stuckness that I felt. And I've never had that again because of the work that I do now, and the work that I do with my clients, and the work that I teach. So reframing was definitely a space for me, and something that I used. Another example I really want to give is when I lost my mother to cancer, I still had to go to work. So I'm processing grief and I needed to go to work. So how I did that was through a reframe. You know, I would show up at that front door, I would take a deep breath, and I would go and do my day's work. And then when I left for the day, I was in processing mode. So I wasn't bypassing, I was still going through the experience. And those two things can coexist. What we're talking about when we talk about bypassing is just making sure you're not completely ignoring the processing part of the emotions that you have. And yes, that's a very big example, but you know, we've given some lighter examples as well. So I want to give that kind of like big example as well. Many people can relate to that with, you know, going through a breakup or a redundancy, or you know, those big kind of things, a financial crisis in their life, when you still need to continue on, but you also need to process what's happening for you and the emotions.
That's where the short-term reframe can work to get you in the door. But when you come home, do some deeper work.
Good. Well, that is our episode for today. Thank you for viewing, watching, and subscribing. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. We will see you all again next week.
See you next time.